Welcome back to Live Now from Fox. I'm your host, Anna Marsik. Turning right now to another high-profile story that we have been following. Singer David, known legally as David A. Burke, faces was supposed to face two court dates following his arrest for the 2025 murder and dismemberment of 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez. This post coming from the Associated Press on your screen right there saying, breaking, prosecutors say David stabbed 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez to death to silence her from revealing their inappropriate relationship. So joining me to break down the latest in this case is defense attorney Silva. Megerditchian, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. So first of all, let's just break down what we learned today. The preliminary hearing was originally scheduled for this Friday, May 1st. We've learned that has been rescheduled to later in May. So let's break this down. What did we learn?
Well, here's the issue. So we knew that there would be a delay. And what's happening May 12th, that there's going to be a conference for the attorneys and the defendant to be there to see the status. There's a lot of evidence outstanding. And this is normal in any case, whether high profile or not. When you're dealing with a murder, there's so much evidence. So what happens is the defense attorneys, they have the right to see all of that evidence, but it's not enough time for the prosecutors to turn it over. To do your job properly as a defense attorney, you need to see all of the evidence before you do an actual hearing. So what they did was they're going to have a pre-conference on May 12th, and they state that the preliminary hearing will happen on May 26th. But again, I have a feeling that preliminary hearing will be delayed further because I don't think it's possible for all of the evidence to come in for the defense attorneys to do a hearing that they need to do for the prelim.
So David's attorneys had pushed for an immediate preliminary hearing, but then they backed off after receiving the voluminous amount of discovery in that case. What did we learn? What was revealed?
Well, there was so much. I mean, we know that there was voluminous child pornography. We also know that the autopsy was also released, and that we know that Celeste Rivas, the young girl, was killed, it looks like, by a sharp instrument. You can assume it was some kind of stabbing. So we know that happened. We also know that a motive was released. The motive being that the singer David was worried that this young girl was going to reveal that he was having an inappropriate sexual affair with a young girl, which he knew could ruin his career. And so that's the motive that the prosecutors put forward, is that we know there's a special circumstances in this case that led David, in their minds, to commit this murder. And that was, if she released the information that she was underage while involved in a sexual relationship with David, it would ruin his career. So all of this evidence came out, but they're still waiting for voluminous evidence, including information from his cell phone. That is still outstanding. So there's really a lot that defense needs in this case.
How significant was it that the defendant had pushed for that 10-day preliminary hearing timeline?
You know, it's so risky because what the defense attorney is saying is, hey, prosecutors, you charged him with a really horrendous crime. Show us the evidence. Let's do the hearing. Let's see if you have enough probable cause to hold him on these charges. It's a high risk move. And let me tell you why. Usually, when we have a case that involves life in prison or possibly the death penalty, we need investigators, the defense investigators, to look into the case. We have a cell phone expert that reviews the evidence. We have so many experts that help us take apart the prosecutor's case. By rushing to a preliminary hearing, you're risking doing your part to defend your client. But at the same time, you're putting fire under the prosecutors to say, produce your evidence.
So let's talk about using lyrics as evidence. You've analyzed the case, mentioning how California laws regarding artistic expression could impact the use of David's lyrics as evidence. How closely do the lyrics or the imagery in, let's say, for example, romantic homicide, like moving a body in a vehicle, need to match the actual crime scene for a judge to let those in?
It's such a high bar, and it's such an interesting topic because if the judge rules that this was, because remember, romantic homicide came out a couple of years before Celeste's murder. But if the judge sees that there's some kind of blueprint. And what the judge balances is the probative value of this evidence. Is it more important than the prejudicial effect? And what I mean by prejudicial effect is this evidence really is big for a jury. If a jury sees lyrics that are very similar to what happened to this young girl, or the fact that he had pre-planned a murder, then the judge could say, look, the evidence is so similar between the lyrics or the imagery and what happened, it's allowed in. But it's a super high bar. And what that means is the prosecutors really have to show a real relationship. It has to be a very close similarity between the lyrics or the imagery and what occurred. We see this a lot in school shooting cases where you have children who write essentially in their diaries, something that they want to do. But this is even more because California protects the artist's words and the poetic license. So it's a very high bar.
So, how does the unsealing of the autopsy, which suggests dismemberment, complicate the defense's ability to argue that this was anything other than a calculated act?
I mean, it's going to be really difficult. But again, the defense has a lot of work. They have to get their experts also to analyze the autopsy. They have to get an investigator to interview if there were any witnesses. There is a lot here. Like, for instance, they are also going to show that maybe David did not commit this crime. Remember, the probable cause hearing for the preliminary hearing, it's a lower bar than beyond a reasonable doubt. So they have a lot of time to prepare for trial, but they have their work cut out for them. Because look, it's David's registered Tesla. It's the fact that, there are lyrics that are troublesome. There is the fact that he had this inappropriate relationship with Celeste Rivas, who was only 12 at the time they started their relationship. There's so much negative evidence in this case already that the public knows. The defense has a lot of work to do in defending their client.
What signals are you watching for that hint at whether prosecutors are confident or whether they're scrambling?
Oh, they seem really confident. Now we know that the LAPD really put these charges against David kind of quickly before I think the DA was necessarily ready, but it looks like they're ready. I think the child pornography images that they found, that's huge. The autopsy results that are unsealed, that's huge for the prosecutors. I think they're very confident. They haven't made their decision whether they're going to go for the death penalty or not, but there is a phenomenal prosecutor on this case. And honestly, David's defense attorneys, Blair Burke is a phenomenal attorney as well. It's really a battle of the titans here. But at the end of the day, whenever you're dealing with a murder case, it really does come down to the evidence. And it's going to be a battle of the experts. Can the prosecutor show beyond a reasonable doubt that David did this himself premeditated? Or can the defense show there is an alternate philosophy or reasoning here? It's really going to be interesting to see how this develops.
So, the bottom line, what should viewers understand about where this case stands right now and where it could go in the next few weeks?
It is so early. I would tell the viewers absolutely every day we're going to get more snippets and more evidence as to what the prosecutors have. Now, we're not going to really know what the defense has until trial. A good defense attorney is going to keep their defense close because they want an uncorrupted jury pool where they will have a jury who's ready to hear their defenses, who have an open mind. And once that happens, the defense can put all the work that they put together in defending their client forward. But it's going to be interesting to see how the prosecutors come forward. I think Nathan Hochman, the head DA of LA County, he has a lot vested in this case. And I think he is really going to put out as much as he can in the public arena in order to have a jury pool that sees this and thinks this guy is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. So it's going to be a battle of the titans for sure.
All right, Silva, thank you so much for joining us here on Live Now from Fox to break down this case. We really
Thank
appreciate your
you.
time.
Thank you so much for having me. Always a pleasure.
Of course.